Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Addict's Advocate. I'm your host, Dusty Dean. It is my pleasure to introduce Ian. How are you doing, sir?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Hey, thanks for spending your time on a Friday night with me here. I truly appreciate it. You and I know each other from outside circumstances, so it's awesome to be able to get back together again and hear your story because, to be honest with you, I don't actually think I've truly ever heard your story. So this is going to be enlightening for me as well. But you and I have recently had some discussions just because, the ways in which addiction rears its ugly head. Will constantly remind you it's there. It'll make you feel a certain way. It will be frustrating with regardless of how much sobriety knowledge one has. It still finds a way to bite you in the butt, if you will, and remind you it's still there, and remind you that even though with all the knowledge and power that we have about this disease, we still have to manage it. So with that, I don't want to take up any more of your time, Ian. Please, I'd love to hear, what led you down the path to recognize that you had a problem and that you needed to get help, bud.
Yeah. So I found my way into recovery in April of 24. And, I think my history and story with addiction has been a long one, a long, slow road, as I think it is for a lot of us. Starting even in high school, but definitely by college. Um, I found myself saying to my girlfriend at the time, wife now, hey, I think I feel better when I drink. I feel like a better person, or I feel more confident. And that probably should have been the first warning sign right then and there. And, I think from there, my use only ever got more and never really got less. It started with alcohol in college and cannabis, but really alcohol was my thing. Um, and, continued from college to work, and from work into COVID. And what started as, hey, once a weekend, once a month, twice a month, every weekend, every day. And once COVID hit, it really kind of kicked into high gear where, I don't have to go out and see people. I don't always have to have like all my stuff together. It's okay to sit at home and drink, and at least find a really easy way to justify that to myself, right? And in addition to the drinking, ended up trying just different substances, and eventually found my way to stimulants, which became my next drug of choice. And so, something else that I think is important for me during this time is, I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. And, there's the part where that was super helpful, started to make a lot of things make a lot of sense. And then there was the drug addict, and he was like, hey, I get a prescription for Adderall. And so, that was definitely a double-edged sword there. But, I think I was bouncing back and forth between my use. If I didn't have access to anything else, I was drinking all the time and then gaining weight, and then getting self-conscious about the gaining weight, and then finding my way back into stimulants. Um, it got to a point where I had lost my prescription for the Adderall because, surprise, surprise, I had a high blood pressure as a result of all this. And so, I lost my prescription there, and, found my way to crystal methamphetamine. And the part of addiction, I think, is you start to isolate. And so, I was self-medicating with alcohol and amphetamines, and slowly pulling away from my family. And I was hiding as much as I could. And eventually, at one point, my wife was out and dropping off the kids, and I lost track of time, and she came home, and I had all my paraphernalia out on the desk, and she didn't mention anything at the time. She gave it a day, and then I picked her up for she had dropped her car off to get the tires changed, and we pull up in front of the house, and she said, hey, I want to ask you something. And she brought up that what she saw walking in the day before. And that, you know, addiction in general, but like crystal methamphetamine for sure, was something I never wanted anyone ever to know. That was something I wanted to hold on to myself forever and ever. I, I'm not surprised that I got caught, but I had definitely thought about what happens if I caught and how my life would be over. Um, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about, you know, hey, is this where I think about committing suicide so that I don't have to fess up to this or face this. And but I was able to say to my wife at the time, like, there is something going on. I'm not ready to talk about it, but slowly over time, I was able to let her know what was going on, and she has been 100% my rock and full support during this time. She obviously recognized that there was some or at least there was addiction issues that I was suffering with, even if I wasn't ready to admit it. She was actually going to Al-Anon meetings even before all of this went down. But she offered to help me find a recovery program. But even before that, I finally got to a place where I said, "Yeah, I don't think I can stop on my own. I can't stop. Uh, whether it was alcohol or amphetamines or drugs, I was not. I had known actually for a while, but like, yeah, I was not able to stop using these substances because I couldn't see a way where life was worth living or how I could go through life without using. And being able to say that she offered, I think I was at a place where I didn't know where to go from there. This whole thing that went down where um, uh, something I never wanted anyone ever to know is out there, with my wife, and I felt so empty. And she helped me find, my way into the recovery program where we met, and uh, that ended up being seriously life changing. And I think it's not all recovery programs are created equal. I truly think that the one that we found was a really special place, but really represents the ideals, I think, of what group therapy and, kind of a recovery group can be and can accomplish. And it's been immensely helpful. And so, that happened in April 24. Now, I think 8 months later, I'm sober to this day. And like you kind of, where we started with all this, it has not been easy. There's been challenges. I keep thinking that, hey, maybe I got a handle on this. And then I keep running into something that ends up being a major bump in the road.
It's interesting how the addict's mind plays this game with, I'm different, right? It's okay, right? You're the exception to the rule. Most people have the issue, but guess what? You got the lucky draw. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And so and I think that's that midbrain, right? That whole mid animal brain going, hey, everything's
Oh,
good. Just,
totally.
it's simple Pavlov's needs, and you're locked in on that need and that need only, and you can't get out of it, right? You're stuck on it. I always joke. I said, hey, if addiction showed you what it's capable of at the beginning of you starting to use, we'd never have addiction.
Right.
Right?
Oh, totally.
We'd all be like, forget this, right? But that's the thing, is it's kind of baffling, powerful. It sneaks up on you. It becomes, I've gone through 2 separate relapses before, I end up going, this is it, I'm done. Before I even truly actually sought help. And in the beginning of both relapses, it was just like, hey, I can have a beer on a Saturday night with the friends. Hey, I deserve one on Friday because I had a hard week. And Saturday shows up too. That's fine. Then all of a sudden, hey, midweek. Then, hey, every day. Then, hey, can't survive without it every day. And then you're like,
Right.
what the hell happened?
Yeah.
you know, the underlying things that cause us to, I think for our addiction to really take hold is interesting, because I think that if every counselor approaches addiction in the way of, hey, what started the underlying use, right? Because I think there is a trigger. It can be purely genetic, sure, right? And you've just run yourself down the hole, but the need to constantly increase your usage to feel better, the mental health game. I just talked to a friend earlier today that he basically was able to step away from drinking, and he's and he's done it before for 10 years, and it's like it's nothing to him. It's like, he's got a little bit of a health issue, and he's like, the really thing that pisses me off is I can't eat my Oreos anymore. So Oreos was
Really?
his thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just like, I'm fine with not drinking. I'm just like, look, I can leave the Oreos, man, but what? I can't drink. That's,
Yeah.
and so it's just funny. Like, again, it's that genetic trick too, right? It's like, some people
Hmm.
just they don't latch on like we do.
Hmm.
And so there's a naivete, right, on what it does. And those sometimes are the scariest people to interact with, if they've always been able just to sit there and put it away and walk away, and they've had
Right.
no, because they don't understand. And I think for you, obviously, it was a blessing to get caught by the person you got caught by, because
Yeah.
there was a lot of sympathy there, right? There was a lot of
Yeah.
understanding already, because if she just simply told you right then and there, what are you doing? You're a shitty person. Stop doing that. Your path could have been a whole different trajectory, my man.
Absolutely, 100%. It could have been different. I count myself as extremely blessed and fortunate that I did get caught, and I got caught by the person that I did. Um, it, you know, it, I was so mentally prepared for all the things. You're terrible. How could you get addicted? I'm leaving. This is unacceptable. You're awful. And I think if that's what I had been, presented with when I got caught, um, absolutely, absolutely. There was the thought about suicide, and who knows where that would have gone. But for sure, I would have ran and hid, at least bare minimum. I think that she would have been full within her rights to have shared this with her family, or say she was concerned, and she did tell me she was concerned. For our family, we have 3 young sons, and full within her rights to do what she thought she would need to do to protect them. And I could have totally seen that driving me away, causing me to hide, coming up with whatever crazy justification it was to keep using. But I'm so glad that that's not how things went down. One of the questions that you asked is, how do you love someone with addiction? I think all of us, deserve love and support, whether we're able to acknowledge where we're at and, take the path to take those steps to participate in the path of recovery. We're not really going to be able to do that if we're not able to be loved and supported. And I think that does come with the balance too, that like those who love and support us do need to draw boundaries, rightfully so. There's a huge impact that can come from addiction in so many ways, shaped and forms, that, our loved ones should be able to draw the boundaries, while at the same time saying, I still think you're a good person. I think you deserve love. I think you deserve treatment. But I'm really glad, because when I got caught, that's what my wife showed me. I love you. I want you to get help. And at the same time, if this continues, I will need to protect myself. And hearing that is, what helped me actually get onto the path of treatment.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Hallelujah. Thank God. And that's part of the mission statement of what we're doing here, is to try to enlighten those that have absolutely no idea. They're baffled. They're confused. They understand how easy it was for them to take care of themselves, and not being addicted to something. Plus, it's painful, right? I mean, you don't want to watch your family member go through these things, and feel helpless in it. And there's conversations of, my life is over if I get clean. Well, what is it that's driven you to that mental state, right? What's the
Mm-hmm.
underlying cause? I mean, obviously, you talked about ADHD diagnosis in adulthood, and again, it's tough, because we're in a constant discovery of ourselves through life as well, right? We touched base on this, you and I, in our phone call the other night, that you're not even sure what all's going on, right? So,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
and I think that goes the case with all of us, right? We're like, well, we think this is what we're being told to do, and this is how we live our lives, and this is how we find bliss and peace and
Yeah.
happiness, and yeah, you're just kind of like, but something doesn't seem right. I know this works, so I'm just going to keep doing this until something changes my mind. And you had touched base on just the whole, you know, medications, weight gain, balancing these things, right? And that's, unfortunately, it's another psychological screw. It screws with your head. It really
Right.
does, because you're like, I'm trying to get better, and now all of a sudden I physically I physically don't look the same. And, it's
Right.
like, well, this isn't the right trajectory. So screw it. I'm going to go back to what I know works.
Mhm.
And, and then that becomes a slippery slope depending upon what it is. And I think that even, even from the side of the medical attention that we get in this recovery, that nothing's a silver bullet, right? Nothing works perfectly, right? And
Right.
then you add the time with just biological changing, and kind of like, the counselor had said, one of our meetings was just that it's this constant fine tuning you now have to do. And this is the thing that you get to now deal with. This is your bag the rest of your life. And you're like, oh, fun. Thanks. Just
Appreciate
exactly what I
that.
signed up for. Right.
Well,
Um,
awesome.
you know,
I thought things were supposed to get easier, right? No.
right. And again, that's the thing, be careful what you know, because, once you look behind the curtain, and you recognize it for what it is, at the very least, there's peace in recognizing it, but it doesn't make things easier. If anything, it makes things more raw and more real because you're so almost hypersensitized to it all, right?
Yeah. On that note, I think it does become more raw. I think one of those things is kind of always the question is, when did you become addicted?
Right.
And I think I subscribe to the belief that as soon as you have that first hit, that first drink, that's where it starts. And I think the things that start as, we're doing it for fun start to become, sources of self-medication where, hey, I feel bad or I feel off. I feel like I don't fit in. Hey, I can take this thing and everything's great. I feel better. I feel confident. I feel like my best self. And then that very easily becomes, um, I feel bad. Let me take this. I feel better. I don't have to deal with the things in my life that are making me feel bad. And
Right.
doing that over enough times, like that's all of a sudden when I don't have that medicine, hey, I can't handle this. This is awful. And it only goes, even further from there. So when we're talking about getting sober and stopping, just because you stop taking the drugs doesn't mean that all of those things, all the stuff that was going on that's causing those feelings, that hasn't gone away. That's still there. You're still going to need to deal with it. And I don't know that that's always really appreciated about recovery and getting sober. But it's a huge part of it. I think it's a huge part of what makes it so difficult to stick with recovery, because things don't get better. They actually start to feel a whole lot worse, at least in the beginning. I think one of the things I keep coming back to is it's really hard to feel your feelings. And man, do you start feeling them in those early days of recovery. And it's overwhelming and it's super challenging, super difficult. But if you're able to talk to people, talk to that recovery group, ideally, I think if you're able to find your way into therapy one way or another, I do couples therapy with my wife, which is was a real challenge to start, and continues to be challenging. And at the same time, um, having that ability to talk to people outside of myself, where it's not just me thinking and reasoning, it helps to identify issues and things going on that I didn't even realize. Helps me to start taking those changes, start making those changes to do different actions that actually help resolve those bad feelings that were driving me to use in the first place. And I think that's where recovery starts to really kick in and start to be effective, and life starts to improve. But it doesn't happen in those first few weeks of just getting sober. Detox is not the end, it's the beginning.
Yeah. Well said, Ian, because I agree with you. And we've had this reiterated to us, is that recovery is not stopping your substance use. That's not it. Recovery
Right.
is so much more, right? That is the first step. Um, and you're right. It's feeling your feelings is scary, especially when you've never known how to process them correctly, or you're dealing with unresolved trauma that you've never been able to, truly get through those stages of grief, whatever it may be, because unfortunately, grief waits for no man either, right? And
Right.
so, the traumatic events in life, however they impact us, we watch the world continue on without us. And
Hmm.
so that ends up feeling isolating and lonely because you're like, hey, I'm dealing with some stuff here and nobody seems to give a shit. So now I got to just manage this on my own. So, well, I'll
Yeah.
do the things that I know that help me immediately relieve the pain and the stress. And that's, what we do.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, you're afraid to not only feel feelings, but then you're afraid that your feelings are wrong. And so now you're like, please somebody validate me and how I feel. So that is truly a beautiful thing, I think, in a detox environment. You get the right one in the recovery, the right one. People hear it, people know it, people have experienced the things that you're talking about. And so you're finally like, thank God I'm not alone. There's a tribe out there
Right.
that gets me. Um, and that's empowering. That's again, this we've all experienced it now, right? That this is something that is one of the most life-saving things is
Yeah.
the sober community. Um, and and that's a blessing. Outside of your immediate family, I mean, obviously the missus. Is there other people, family wise, that realize that you were struggling with something, or is this keep it been tight knit?
It's interesting. I had this kind of recognition that my use was higher, right? Like I never let anyone in on my illicit drug use, but when it came to like alcohol, if if it was available, I was consuming, and I was consuming to a level that if I were to look around me, I noticed no one else was drinking as much as I was drinking. When it comes to like company parties or family getaways, and I kind of half expected, hey, someone would say something to me at some point, and that never came, which was kind of surprising. Um, and there was a part of me that was like, well, maybe no one notices, which was almost certainly not true. Um, but I think it kind of was also reinforcing of the actions I was taking to hide it. Hey, I can drink a lot, but nothing bad ever happens, so don't worry about it, which is kind of the things I was telling myself. Um, and so, at this point, I've talked to my brother and my sister about it. I have not told my dad yet. And I'm not sure if I ever will, because I just don't know how that conversation will go down. But when I told my brother and my sister about it, there was no sense from them like, hey, I kind of knew, or, um, I'm, uh, yeah, I had a suspicion or anything. There was nothing like that. But it was really started with, hey, thanks for telling me. And I'm so glad that you're getting help. And anyone that I've told about me being in recovery, that has always been the reception, the response that I've gotten, which is wonderful because I would have thought it was I would have and did think it would have been totally different, which is why it's always so hard to tell people. Um, but yeah, no, no. I'm sure people had their suspicions and had their thoughts, but none ever shared with me.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Well, at least you got good positive reception from the ones that matter. So that's good to hear. We obviously know, like in the process of going through recovery right now, right? We've especially during the holiday season, we've come up to realize that Christmas parties, depending upon the state in which you are in your recovery, Christmas parties are a trigger that has a funny way of sneaking up on you. And what do we
Yeah.
mean by that, right? Well, we can go to the Christmas party, be strong, be like, hey, I got this, have an okay time considering, and then go home and then proceed to have a shitty 4 or 5 days after that because the body's going, hey, you just put me out in front of the thing that I used to love and enjoy. And now because you didn't, I'm going to make you feel the effects anyway, as if you had it. And now you're going through a withdrawal. How does that feel? And you're like, well, what did I do to deserve this, right?
Yep.
um, just again showing the biology in what's happening, right?
Hmm.
What other triggers have you been confronted with that you didn't think were going to be an issue, but you're like, oh my goodness, they are?
Yeah. It seems to be the things that are heavily tied to what you would use to cover in the first place.
Hmm.
So, in reference to the company holiday party, I knew that was going to be an uncomfortable time. It was surprising how triggering and difficult it was for me because I had been to other events that had alcohol, events that I had attended previously, and consumed alcohol. Um, and I've been able to go back and be able to be okay. But with the company holiday party, what ended up being very triggering was I was in an environment that was more reminiscent of almost like a college party type of drinking versus a get together between friends. And um, there's a part of me that was like, hey, this is where I used to love drinking. Um, but also there was a part of me, and this is what became way more visceral. I feel super uncomfortable because I don't feel like I fit in. And I don't feel like I can fit in unless I'm joining the party and drinking. And so, I have nothing to do but to sit there with that feeling. And as the hours were ticking by, it only got more and more uncomfortable as, time went on. People were drinking more and more. And so that's where I got to a point where I kind of had to pull the plug. My wife was there with me at the party and said, hey, I got to go. But even afterwards, it in some ways hit harder than it was even at the party, because I was gone. I left the party. There was no reason to feel uncomfortable. And at the same time, something had stuck with me. And it wasn't like this feeling of missing out or anything like that. But it I think what I realize now is it was very revealing. It revealed something about me that was incredibly uncomfortable, something I would use to hide, something I didn't want to acknowledge, and I didn't like that. I was very resentful of that. So, that's those are the kind of things that kind of catch you off guard in recovery. Is it's different for everybody. There's really no way to give a heads up about it. It's very personal to all of us, and yet um, when we look at that our substance use as a means of self-medication to make those bad feelings go away, when they come back out at us, it can be all sorts of triggering, difficult. For me, it induced a fair amount of depression, um, physical withdrawal from my family. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to associate. I didn't want to interact. Um, but I think this holiday party was by far the most difficult time I've had in my 8 months in recovery so far. Um, and it was one of those things that, what made it more difficult is I didn't reach out. I mean, I did reach out to my recovery group right away, but I didn't let them know the full extent of how I was feeling. And, that's one of the things that I think can be really challenging with recovery, is that you're constantly fighting yourself, your ability to connect, your ability to let people in and let people support you. Um, you know, especially as time goes on, because you feel like you're supposed to have more and more of a better handle on it, and that's just not true. And the more that you kind of buy in and subscribe to that idea, the more likely you are to not reach out and not connect. And by not connecting, that's how you start that kind of path back to relapse, right? So yeah, I think that by far has been the most difficult time. I'm sure there's been other times, but I think this last week has just been so overwhelming that, like, that takes the cake by far.
Yeah. Um, it- it's tough because we have the traditionalism of these parties too, right? During the season, we can't help but there is an emotion laced in it, right? Because it's something that we all do. It's a common theme in society. It happens yearly. Usually brings thoughts of family together. And it can be just that in of itself is triggering for a lot of people, right? Even if they don't have an addiction issue, right? Some people say the holidays are good times, but a lot of people have a lot of traumatic experiences around the holidays,
Hmm.
and it makes for what it is. But I get it. You have these moments where you're just like, I want to pull my hair out and scream at the top of my lungs, and people will think I'm absolutely certified bonkers if I do that. And I
Right.
don't want to do that, but I don't have any other option right now. And yeah, unfortunately, right, when we start adding in things like ADHD, right, I mean, you're already hyper vigilant in just the way that you're processing information. It's coming at you so fast, right? It's overwhelming at times. And then when you add this thing called addiction on top of it, right, it makes for just, yeah, it just makes for an uncomfortableness that you have to live it to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I commend you, man, because it's just not, you almost wish you're like, if I could only invent a pill that lets people experience this for just a half an hour. You'd
Yeah.
be like, whoa, dude, dude, let me get you some help, man.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Yeah.
this sucks.
Yeah. Well, it's
um,
for us, it's so normalized, and we know it's consuming, but I don't
Welcome
think
to
we
our
really,
world. Yeah.
yeah, we don't realize like just normal people don't feel this way, right?
Right. Right.
Normal people don't have this kind of level of call it obsession or call it discomfort.
Yeah.
Um, I think about the idea. Hey, is addiction? Um, uh, is there is there a lack of will, a lack of self control?
Mm.
And I always compare that to when the amount of will and determination when I was trying to find drugs that I didn't have at the time, is an absolute excellent example of the amount of will and control I can exert when I want to put my mind to it. But the other side of it is there's something there where life feels so hard to live without this tool that we found. And so when we are unable to deal, unable to cope, and you can only do that for so long unless you found an alternative. And for me, it's definitely having a group and that support group, not feeling alone. That I think you mentioned earlier about please validate my feelings. Like hopefully you're there. That'll be super helpful. But I think we spend a lot of time, trying to isolate and get away, that we think no one understands us. There is no validation of our feelings. And once we get to that point, we don't think that that's important anymore. And we end up fighting ourselves until, hey, I'm in a group, I'm talking about what's going on, what I'm thinking, and someone says, oh yeah, me too. Or, hey, like, I really appreciate you saying that because I definitely struggle with that too. And when that validation happens and you're not alone, that actually does help you cope. It does help you deal. At least opens your mind to the idea there might be a different way to pursue these things, but at least you're not alone. And that's how, I was able to stop self-medicating. It didn't feel like white knuckling it anymore. And I didn't think that was possible. I tried to quit so many times in that kind of self-recognition that there was a problem. And always came back to it because just life didn't feel like it was worth living. So yeah, I think there is amount of self-will and determination there, but there has to be something better to work towards too. If we don't have it, you can only white knuckle it for so long.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that up because I agree with you. Yeah, you can't stop substance use and just sit there and go, okay, now all of my problems are going to be solved, because I think for most of us, there is a root cause. There's something that has driven you to this addictive state. You're not addressing something in your life, underlying mental health issues. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about the 12 steps. If people pay attention to that fact, because obviously you have yourself a free service, which is hallelujah that it even exists, right? But you have people that don't have anything that has bound them to life, nothing that has given them a sense of purpose, nothing that has given them a sense of hope. And the 12 steps basically tries to provide you with a pathway to gain insight, right? To gain clarity, to find purpose, to find that drive, and to make life worth living without the need to medicate, right? In that regard. And I think that that's beautiful. And because again, you unfortunately on the flip side see the reality of what those 12 steps mean to some people, is that is their anchor. They have
Mm-hmm.
nothing else, right? It is purely their anchor, right? Whereas if people do have families, right, if they have successful jobs, if they've got good support networks outside of this meeting where I've met people because we're just all sharing the common problem. It enriches life, right? This is the point, right? We're trying to enrich our lives. We're trying to be
Hmm.
better than what we were. And we thought that for a while, those things that we were doing was enriching our lives. At least it was making life in our minds more manageable.
Right.
I think that the whole self-will thing, because I just talked to a counselor about this that actually had on the previous episode, that she feels that self-will is out of the picture prior to getting clean. She really feels that it's not in the, because again, if it was, then we'd stop. Duh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That didn't work. That didn't
Right.
work.
Yeah.
So, but post, yes, right? Because now we know we're conscious of it, right? We have to make this choice. We have to every day, right? Sobriety's one day at a time.
Hmm.
Um, what is it that you're doing now in your daily routines that have helped you? What is it that, I mean, are you, because I don't know the type of work that you do. I have no idea what you do for a living. I don't think you and I have ever discussed this, but my first impression of you is that you're a very analytical man. Like
Hmm.
you're dealing with something in your world that's highly technical. And I could be completely way off base, but your personality presents to me like you're very analytical. You have a very specific thought process when you go about your work, scientific maybe even. But am I close?
Yeah. 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 So
I
I
am.
do engineering.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay,
Yep.
so because of that, right, you had to have built your system, a model, right, in which how you're going to now manage this new you, this new life. What does that look like? Give me things that empower you now in your sobriety and your routine. What is it that you do?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it starts with when I first entered recovery. I actually did take time off of work to just focus on being in a recovery program. And that ended up being pretty essential because it took a lot of the noise out of my world, and it let me work with the tools that ended up getting presented in recovery as things that could or are helpful. And so I think it gave me that time to try to practice being a little bit healthier as far as like physical activity, to try to switch things up in my diet, to actually try to catch up on sleep and things of that nature, and also to attend recovery and have that time for self-reflection. And so I think all of those things ended up being super important, if for no other reason than it let me become a little bit more familiar with that frame of mind where I did feel centered and at peace, and I didn't feel the intensity and level of those bad feelings that were driving me towards use. Unfortunately, those times don't last forever. Everyone's got to work and make a living, pay the rent and everything else. So I did have to return to work, but I was able to do it in a place where I was recognizing some of the things that were just not helpful for me. And so, upon that return to work, I was able to work out a deal with my boss that I would come back part time. So that's part of where I am right now, and that does help because I life continues to happen, things continue to be hard, and so those 2 extra days a week where I'm not working, I'm able to have a little bit more time for self reflection, understand when things are getting out of hand. I'm getting a little bit further away from that mental space where I didn't feel unsettled. The anxiety wasn't so high. Um, but I think in short, it's doing what I can to recognize when that tension, that inner tension, is starting to build up again, and then starting to exercise all the tools: physical exercise, diet, sleeping. Sometimes it's just acknowledging, and this is what happened to me today. Today I was actually supposed to attend an event at my kid's school, but because of the things that have been going on this past week with the holiday party and the depression that happened, I was actually able to say, "Hey, I'm not ready to go and put the mask on yet." And I do feel like if I were to force myself out there, um, that's going to drive me further into the hole. It's not going to help me come back out of it. And that's been a struggle to be able to recognize that at times because I've spent so much time missing events, spent so much time not wanting to be there, that I've almost swung the other way where there has to be a really good reason to not go. And so pulling away because once again, my addiction is causing me to miss events was actually hard to acknowledge. And at the same time, I was actually able to recover there. But it also kind of comes with, there needs to be a little bit of accountability there too. It's easy to say, hey, I need the time to recover. And then you go and use that time, like on the iPad and whatnot. So that's always a challenge. And I think that leads to the other piece, which is continuing to be a part of a recovery community. Because I think there's a real power in checking in and on some sort of a time frame. For me, it's weekly, to let people know, here's what's going on, here's what I'm feeling. I use this as an opportunity to kind of share what it is that I'm trying to use to help that situation or work through it, or even just acknowledge, hey, I don't have anything. And the group serves as a true and helpful mirror to, again, validate where I'm at. And if I were to miss that time, the more time I spend away from the group, I can feel it. It's the further away I get from being accountable or being honest about where I'm at. And some of those things, some of those biases, the half truths I start to tell myself before they become full on lies, they start to sneak in a little bit more and a little bit more. So, outside of, trying to make healthy choices, staying connected with the group by far is the hugest asset I have in my recovery.
Once we're left with all this clarity and this sobriety, we're going, okay, well, now what? We're day one of our new lives, and now I'm sitting here twiddling my thumbs on my couch going, where do I go from here? Because I normally have this time occupied. And so it's important for people to understand that recovery doesn't need to be 100%. I mean, you just do one thing. Do one thing to slowly start changing the trajectory of your life. As far as, just because you got sober doesn't mean that now you have to go and buy the new car, the new wardrobe, the new house, the new girlfriend, change jobs. We have to stay honest with ourselves in our recovery. And that, that includes the being honest, right? And recognizing when, hey, we're kind of taking advantage of this thing that we're doing. Let's not, let's be true, right? And how we're really working on this. You bring up something that's interesting because you from what I understand, is that, with the ADHD, right, there's this notion of like there's a motor inside of us, right? It's going to start with slowly ramping up, right, to the point where it starts affecting us physiologically. In managing bipolar, I get rapidity of thoughts, right? I get this generalized anxiety that starts coming inside of me. And it's just kind of like, oh my God, it's uncomfortable. And it's almost like an overstimulation, right? And it's just uncomfortable. And you're like, I want to get rid of this feeling like now. And so, yeah, it's being conscious of that. It's being conscious of what the root of that is. And we were always just like, any other options that we even attempted to deal with, it never worked. So we were just going to use this one that was always a tried and true method to solve this problem, even though it's going to bite you in the butt later on in life. Right.
Right. Always looking for the easy button, right? Easy button's easy. You can do a lot if you got an easy button.
Right. If you came across someone that was like, hey, you don't know me, but I've got a problem. I saw your video. It inspired me, but I really don't even know what to do, where to begin. I'm afraid of going on this journey. What do you say to them?
Probably start with, you're worth it. You deserve it. I think for a lot of us, that's actually really hard to believe. And, when we don't believe that about ourselves, we find all kinds of reasons to sabotage efforts to get help and receive help. And so, the recovery is not easy. In fact, there's a lot of false starts because, again, not all recovery programs are created equal. It's very easy to find yourself in one that isn't working for you and becomes a really good reason to throw out the whole effort and just go back to using again. But I think each and every one of us is worth it. I think that we deserve to keep trying to get that help for ourselves. And so that's really easy to say. It's really it's really easy to say.
Right.
It's really hard to believe. It's really easy to undermine that. But it's true that you have to have a little faith to keep trying. If one recovery program doesn't work, if one doctor visit goes bad,
Mhm.
you're going to need to try again. Um,
Right.
and, you know, what is immensely helpful if folks have the opportunity to do it is have someone help you, have someone come with you, have someone go on this journey with you. If you're fortunate enough to have someone in your corner like that, again, they might help validate, hey, that doctor was not it, or this program feels like a little off. We should try something else. It's not you. You're not a failure, or it's not that you've done something wrong and you can't be helped. You can be helped. All of us can be helped. We just have to find that place, that group that works for us. Um, so yeah, that's where I'd start, and it's not easy. It definitely isn't. But if you're asking the question, if you're there, where like, hey, I do want help, but I don't know where to start, and I'm scared, and then that's all you need. You have faith that yeah, help is out there. You can find it, but it won't be easy. But you've already shown that you can just by asking that question all on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, right, these systems, there's a lot of people out there that want to help, right? And unfortunately, it's humans working on humans, right? Some of the things that they do for from a medical side, they still don't know exactly how it works. They just know it does. um, and some people in meetings are 1980s sober, right? They got
Mm-hmm.
sober back in the 80s. Some are 2010 sober, right? So their experience down that road based upon the evolution of just recovery of itself, right? The programs available, right there, they were different experiences, right? Um, some we come across them a lot, right? Some are just purely the warpath guys. No, you
Right.
just stop and you muscle it out, and that's what life's about, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
put your
Yeah.
big boy pants on and get on with it. Let's go.
Yep. Yep.
uh, and that's okay. Some people need that, right? Some people, maybe they lost a militaristic father, but that was the only guy that could ever get through to them. And now they're struggling with addiction, and that's what they need in their life. They need the freaking drill sergeant to go, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
love you, but you're acting like a punk. Snap out of it.
Yeah.
Just because that
Yeah.
works for them. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't work for me. I'd be cowering in a corner, sucking my
Yeah.
thumb,
Yeah.
but, but,
Man, I
but
need a drink after that.
exactly
Yeah.
right. This isn't working. We're going the
Yep.
wrong way here, bud.
Yep.
um,
Well,
um,
that's the other thing too. Like this, absolutely. If not all programs work the same for everybody, but this is our survival, right? Whatever works for you, hold on to it, use it, keep
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Don't let anyone say otherwise. Because if it's working for you, then that's exactly the program that you need. 100%.
Yeah, and that's kind of why, you and I have talked about faith a little bit. I do find that if we dig deep enough into our lives as individuals, regardless of what you believe in, you're going to find all those things in different religions, different spiritualities that are laced in this struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our life is laced, with this, so I think that there's profound benefit to it if we just pay attention to what it is that's going on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we're and that's there's fruit in it, right? There's fruit in it, right? Even as we're still trying to wander this life and figure out what it is we're doing here, why we're doing here, this is an important part of it. Some weird way, shape, and form. It's got benefit for us, and I think that I know that I'm a changed person because of it. I don't think the way I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I still, not to say that it's I've eradicated it from my life, because we both know that that's impossible. But I think that you have to respect the disease. The three C's of Al-Anon are so important, right? You didn't cause it, you didn't cure it. You can't cure it, and you didn't cause it, you didn't cure it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can't control it, and so and recognizing those things, it's like the only thing that you can do is not take that first drink, not
Right.
take that first, that first use. That's the only saving grace, because otherwise it's latched onto you again, and you get to ride that ride. What do you think are the things that lead people to relapse?
Um, Definitely that idea that I discussed earlier about the connection. Um,
Mhm.
I think connection with ourselves, but connection with our family, our friends, definitely connection with our recovery group is what has been key for me to uh, stay away from using. But as life goes on, it becomes easy to say things like, "Hey, I can control it. I got this," or "I should have this, but I'm struggling. But because I feel like I should have this, I'm not going to tell anybody."
Mm.
Um, it's those kind of things that eventually start to creep up to us on us, where we will be using our will, our sense of self-discipline to become the things that keep us from using. And if we rely on that too long without connecting with others, about checking in with the group, getting that sense of validation that helps motivate us to not reach for those tools. I call it a tool. It is what it is. I think I used it because it was a tool. Um, to not go reaching for those tools because of that easy button. So as I feel like I'm starting to disconnect, that's where I feel like that relapse starts to kick in. Um, and I think I'll use my recent experience with that holiday party, because I've been to neighborhood get-togethers where there's alcohol, and I don't feel nearly as triggered as what I did at that holiday party. And as I reflect on it, I really think it's because my neighbors, I have faith and confidence that they're going to treat me the same, think of me the same, whether I'm drinking or not. Um, I didn't have that same faith, even though I know that's totally true and the same, with my coworkers, but I just didn't have that faith in that moment, and that at that party. In fact, I felt very disconnected from the group. Um, and that's where, like, I felt that urge. I felt it in the past. I felt it then. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I felt alone. I didn't feel like I could tell anybody. And so, that the choice was presented right there. Hey, you can take a shot right now and everything will be better. You'll fit right in. Your confidence will be back. You'll be okay. Um, you can have a great time and this will all be fine. That's where I think it, creeps in. I think that's where it starts to hit us one way or another, depending on how long it goes.
Yeah, I time passes, right? And I know that a lot of people from the outside looking in, family members, etc., are going, "Yeah, great for him, right? He's beat it, right? He's living life. He's doing good. Look how strong he is. I'm so proud of him. Life goes on," and you're going, hey, guess what? It's been talking to me all damn day. It's
Right.
been talking to me all damn day. I can't think of anything else but I can't, and you go, but thanks for thinking I've got it all put together. I'm doing a good job, right? Hiding this
Yep.
facade, because again, and that's the other side too, right? Is that we know about recovery fatigue, we know about therapy fatigue, we know about all
Hmm.
these ways in which we're just sitting there like, I just want to stop thinking about it. I just want to stop talking about it. I don't want it to just be in my life anymore. And yet it constantly is reminding me that, hey, I'm still here. So yeah, so you're constantly balancing that out. You're just like, I wish I just didn't have to feel like this, you know?
Right. Right.
Um, and so, yeah, again, it's that whole thing. It's like, hey, you've had a traumatic experience. You've lost someone you love. We've gone through the grieving, the funeral, and now everybody's back to work, and you're going, 3 to 6 months later, you're still going, hey, I'm still grieving the loss of that person, right?
Right.
I'm sorry that you've all gone back with your lives, but I haven't,
Hmm.
and that's the way that, this recovery is. It's not in the same way, but it's still just like, hey, no, it's still reminding me I'm right here. I'm right here. I'm not leaving you. You and I will
Right.
be side by side holding hands till the day we die.
Yep.
and,
Yep.
and so, hey, Ian, but this has been great, man. I appreciate your time on a Friday night. And you have yourself a great weekend, okay, bud? And we'll see each other soon, okay?
Yeah. You as well. Thanks for letting me come on and share my story.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming on. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Bye.